First off, approval of minutes from September 1st. Motion?
Motion to approve that.
Second. Tony, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I don't really have any separate remarks. What I'm going to cover will be in the committee reports and new business and so forth. So that's it for me. Rita, office update?
I did the numbers the other day to see where we are with this fiscal year membership, people who are fully paid, and we're at 75%, which that's really good for this time of year. We don't generally approach, we usually count on 80% for budgeting purposes, and we don't generally approach that until right close to the end of the fiscal year in June. And I did it both by property owner, because some people own more than one property, and also by the amount that I billed. And both come at 75%, which really surprised me. And I think I did a mid-year mailing of statements for people who still owe their fees. And so many of them, they just owe the current year. It's not as though they're years back. So that helped, I think, a lot catching up. So that was good news. I can now monitor voicemail. Remember Peter talked about that last meeting about being able to monitor messages and so on, which I always did anyway. But Gary helped me get it to my telephone, which, because of the way our email works through the GoDaddy website, that really didn't work. It did work to get it into, if on Mondays when I'm home, my voicemail comes right into my email, my office email, which is great. But what it also did, while I'm looking at Gary, in trying to connect, I downloaded an app onto my phone and tried to connect to my email. I looked at my email 2 days later, and it didn't really work. So I looked at my contacts a few days later, and I had contacts, Calvert County government, contractors, people that and don't belong in my contacts on my personal phone. Somehow it linked. It did it twice. I deleted the app, and it still did it. Anyway, I figured out I needed to make one more change. But in any case, yes, I'm not putting them on my phone. I'm not trying that.
She doesn't listen to me anymore.
I don't listen to Gary anymore. But it is nice in that it did bring it to my office email, which is easy. So yesterday, I didn't have to continually throughout the day to check messages. It would pop in. So that was good. The audit draft was received on the 29th, and both Jack and Mike reviewed it. Jack had a few questions, and we sent those to Mark at Alta, and he responded to those. So Jack gave approval, but I still don't have the final. It is finished. I'll send him another reminder today that Jack did approve it, and looking for the final, and then we'll go from there. No problems at all. So that's all I have.
Okay. Board of the committee reports. Gary, update on roads.
Just met with Jeff just before the meeting. They're going to start putting gravel down today, this afternoon. They're going to start over in Elkridge and Riverview and then work their way through. They still think it's going to take 3 days. And there are a few problem areas. I got a call from the Rismans concerned that we were going to put gravel down along their edge of where the Lake Terrace edges to their property. There's really no place for that. Jeff and I talked about it before, and I reassured them that we weren't doing that. And then I reinforced that with Jeff. So, and there's a couple other minor issues, but putting down this gravel isn't that big of a deal, and it shouldn't be. Just reminded everybody, the reason we put gravel down on the edge of the road is there's 1.5 to 2 inches uplift from what used to be the grade to the new asphalt. And if you don't put some transition there, when people pull off, it can break off, and then that just keeps happening. And pretty soon you've got the roads not in good shape anymore. So that gravel mitigates that. Carl is still, has not showed up. He said he was going to come up this week. He hasn't started yet to finish the work down on Lake Terrace, which is, to remind everybody, is to rejuvenate the French drains, or whatever they're called, intrusion wells, that the county sent us a letter about. Also, I responded to a property owner's call about a tree that the property owner thought was on our right-of-way. I went and looked at it, and I really don't think that's why the property owner called me up, because he knew clearly that the tree was not on our right-of-way. But while I was there, he pointed out that on that right-of-way, at the end of Ottawa, there's a strip of right-of-way that runs out to Buckler.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not developed. It's like 2 or 3 lots wide is all it is. Maybe the length of this garage. It's not very far. But the property owner on the east side of that right-of-way owns the lot behind it, which the asphalt that's developed, that the developed part of the right-of-way doesn't extend to that second lot. And Carl had come to me several weeks ago and said, look, the guy's contracted me to clear that lot. Is there a problem with me going on your right-of-way to get into that lot so I don't tear up his property with my equipment? I said, no, that's what the right-of-way is for. Go ahead and do that. There was some concern by the person that called me originally that Carl was going to take out a couple of poplars that were probably 4 feet around. They were big poplars. So I called Carl and I said, Carl, what are you doing here? He says, well, I haven't been down there for a while, but I think my guys have done everything they're going to do. And sure enough, I went and looked, and they had trimmed everything up so that they could get in there and out without tearing anything else. So the trees are not going anywhere. But he says, and we're going to be putting down stone pretty quick, too, to build this guy's driveway off from the asphalt on your right-of-way into his second lot. I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah, when I talked to you, you gave permission. I said, whoa, Carl, I can't give permission for anything. He says, oh, I guess I misunderstood. I said, no, that's got to go in front of the board. Now, I think some of you all heard about this at the general meeting. But at any rate, that property owner is planning, has it in their head, and I think they came into the office and said something about it. I think Ray told them, yeah, if you want to develop the right-of-way, you got to build it out to county standards or something like that.
And it needs board approval.
And need board
And
approval.
he actually did not talk to me about a driveway. What he spoke to me about was, what if he wanted a road extended into our right-of-way, unpaved right-of-way? And that's when I said, well, in the past, the board has always said it would have to be a paved road to county standards. Of course, that goes back to when we were going to turn the roads over to the county. So that's the past. So, but anyway, I said, you would need board approval. He never mentioned a driveway. What he asked me about was access. And if his people needed to remove a tree in our right-of-way to gain access to his lot, would that be okay? And I said, well, I can't imagine why it wouldn't, but let me double check. So I sent an email to Mike, and Mike's like, no, I don't see why not. What are we going to do with it? Go
So
ahead.
right away before, yeah.
Well, basically, that's the extent of my conversation.
Okay, so everybody's aware that if they go, I told Carl, if you don't have board approval, don't be doing that. I guess it's part of Carl's contract with him to do work. I don't know, it's kind of unusual for Carl to put gravel down, but he does all sorts of things. So I guess we'll wait to hear about that. I thought the property owner maybe he didn't even know there was a meeting today. I don't know. But they're moving right along and they're getting ready, I would think this week, maybe if they were gonna put down gravel, they'd be doing it this week.
I'll see if I can contact him today. And
The gravel's on his lot or on the right of way?
The gravel would be on our right of way and then do a sweeping turn into his lot.
Into his lot.
There's no precedent that I know of for that sort of thing, but in my opinion, that's what the right of way is for, if you ever get to the lots.
well, the reason that in the past, and Bob Patterson, some of you, said that we would not allow something like that, is that years down the road, when that owner decided to sell his property to somebody else, they could come to us and say, listen, why isn't that part of my road paved? Are we going to plow it? And so on. So then that becomes a sticky issue down the road. That's why it's just across the board, not been allowed.
Well, I just misspoke, now that I'm thinking about it. There are two instances where in the community where the pavement ends and people have gravel driveways or just dirt driveways into their property. One was at Deere and Johnson. There's the where Deere goes beyond Johnson and ends, and then there's gravel going into that house at the
My
end.
house.
I'm sorry?
That's my house.
Is that yours?
Mhm.
Okay.
At the
And
very
there's-
end of Deer.
Yeah, right. And then also there's
Deer Court, yeah.
Your court.
Deere,
Paved,
yeah. Also Lake Terrace, where we're having that work done. That pavement ends, and that's still our right of way, and that's a grab, so.
Well, there's lots of gravel driveways that go across the right of way.
Sure.
Between the street and their actual lot line. They have gravel, we have.
Well, that's everywhere. Yeah, that's all over the place.
So
Yeah.
should I send him a message and say, the board still needs to give you approval for what you're doing? Maybe you would, based on what you're saying.
I would suggest that somebody make a motion to do it now.
Is he planning on, constructing on that lot?
He seems to
He
think
also has to
in
come
the
to a-
future he wants to put a house on it. He is thinking that in the future. But the lot has not been perked. And with a new perk test, with the lay of that lot, I don't know that it would perk. For now, he's just going to put a garage on it. So he's going to be driving it.
And note the
Then
house
you-
adjacent. I'm sorry.
Doesn't he have to come to us for that, for road bond or anything for construction?
I told him if he was going to construct anything, that he would have to have one.
Yeah, it would be a road. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
So I'll send him a message, I guess, or call him if I don't have his email.
Getting back to this driveway thing, I want to make sure I have thinking clearly about this. What we're talking about is really not different than, for example, a house on Pine that between the road and their house, they had gravel, and that's where they park. And what we're talking about with them putting in a driveway on the right-of-way that swings in is really no different than that.
Not much difference, except that they don't intend to park on it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but
yeah,
they
they'd
put
be-
gravel on the right-of-way, and so in one instance, they'll be driving on it, and the other one, they park on it. So, okay. I was wondering if I was confused, which is easy to do.
So we would use the right of way to get to his gravel driveway.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, but is he talking about, he wants a paved road back there?
No, he's talking about doing it himself, just putting gravel down to make it so it's not muddy when he drives all over to his lot. That's all.
But the gravel will be in the right of way, will go from the road, cross
It
the
would
right.
be in the right of way.
See if she-
The thought, like I said, years ago, was simply that then years later, somebody would come along, purchase the property, and wonder why his street wasn't paved. So, but Gary's right, there are other instances where, like Lake Terrace.
Well, so I guess anticipating him coming to us for that, do you have think about it, if we have any issues or anything that we need to come up, and we'll address it at that time. All right, Jack, finance?
As good news, we already said the income is really looking quite good. One other income issue is the special tax district. I assume that we will use that to the maximum to pay for the paving, that bill will be coming up very quickly. So we would
I have an
use,
estimate on that, on that.
we'll use all that special tax district money before we use any of our own. Is that the case? Is that the
I would
policy?
think so, yes, I'm sorry.
And everything else, all the expenses look right in line, no surprises. Really steady as she goes, it looks like.
I do have some questions.
Okay.
Referring to the profit and loss budget versus actual.
Yep.
Some of the income streams like the shore and STD, those are coming in through the year, right? So what we're showing here now is only the amount of income that we've received up to September.
Correct.
And there's more coming in. Okay. On expenses, we have $3,000 in legal fees. Remind me what
I
that-
paid $2,700 just this past week and a half or so, well, sometime toward the end of September, for the retainer. It's $2,700 for the retainer.
Retainer.
And then I recall we asked, we emailed him for a response. I don't remember what the, regarding the claims, I think. Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, there was a
related-
couple $100 in fees for that.
Okay. So the retainer doesn't cover some of those kinds of questions?
It seems the way it works is that if I send him a question and he just responds and we say, okay, thanks, we don't get charged. But if I go back and forth just more than once, then it appears that we're getting charged.
If he puts pen to paper.
Well, or more than a little bit of hand to typewriter, to keyboard too. So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so he has to do any amount of research at all. We're being charged, I think it's $3.50 an hour. So it doesn't take long.
So what does the retainer give us?
9 hours.
There is more.
I actually negotiated that, maybe I can explain. The retainer gives us full access to them as many times as we want, basically by telephone. So we can talk to them every day if you want to, if you need to. But if you wanting to offer up an opinion in writing, you're going to pay for it.
Unless it's just a quick question answer in an email, for instance.
Well, even that,
It seems like what we asked on that.
the agreement was
That one we didn't
Tell-
charge.
telephones. If you talk to him, you're not going to get billed. If you want him to write an opinion, even in an email, you might get a bill.
Okay.
So what comes out of the retainer then? That retainer is theirs in full, and that's what we get for it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
I believe the one that we were charged for was the gentleman that had come in complaining about his neighbor and what our duty was with regard to the covenants and corporate documents in responding to a neighbor dispute. And it went back and forth more than twice. Like, gee, I don't understand this, can you clarify it, and so on.
Okay.
And that's the one we were charged $3.50 an hour
Okay.
So that's not covered on the retainer?
for. No, because that's sort of a written opinion, and him having to do a little research, like Jack said, pen and paper, so to speak.
Okay. So we've got 2,000, little less than 2,000 remaining for any additional work that you want. On the maintenance non-right of way, 6,600. In that one, there's no labor shown. So is there labor built into some of these individual line items?
Let me look over there. Well, security, that's labor. That's, that's basically the people at the
That's
beach.
the, yeah,
We call that labor.
right,
So it's built in there. Sanitary facilities is only the porta potty at the beach.
yeah.
Office lot maintenance would be labor. Building and landscape repairs, depending on, like, when we have the roof done, we'll pay for that.
Well, I'm more concerned specifically about the coverage for Robert. And we're using him a lot more than right now anyway than we have in the past.
Right.
And I only see, the only line item I see for labor is in right-of-way labor.
Well, bush hogging,
Well, that's what I'm asking.
yeah, it's built into the line item.
So we do have labor built into some of the other line items.
Yes.
So when he submits an invoice, then you break that out against
Yes,
specific category.
I do.
Okay.
And the labor I use for sort of miscellaneous, like puts a sign up, the community signs, and puts them up and takes them down.
Right.
That would go under, well, labor in the right of way. I guess
Well,
that's.
there's a sign, I mean, you actually do have a sign.
I do, but
sign
it's more
maintenance for non-right of way.
right.
You have road sign repair replace.
That's more for when I order bulk signs, street signs, and he puts one up or takes one down.
Right.
Right. Because that's a little more expensive than just putting a sign up against the post.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there is labor, all I'm wondering is making sure we got labor coverage.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think so.
all right. How about Ms. Fragmites?
So
Instead of
totally,
Miss Utility.
pardon me?
Instead of Miss Utility.
Mondays, the 12th and 13th is what Mark said he probably would come down and do that. So I hope we're all set with the lady in Lake Terrace.
I don't even know if she's living there right now.
So
There's
you
a lot
know,
of-
and then somebody, you mentioned Lake Terrace and the roads business. So is there going to be, when are they going to start doing stuff there? So he can come down Monday or Tuesday, get it done.
Even if they're working, they'll be able to get by.
I mean, that's the main thing he's coming down to do. He's also going to be looking at some of the other areas too, and spot treating as necessary.
That house is vacant right now and for rent.
Okay, okay,
For
so,
sale sign up there.
Yeah, for sale and for rent both.
okay, so we'll chase him away. But that's our last big plot to be taken care of because it hasn't been treated all along. So I hope we'll get most of it with this one treatment. And then Mike and I were talking about some suspected fragmites he found over in Mills Creek. And it turned out to be something called miscanthus. I took pictures of it. It fooled me. I thought, looks like it, but something wasn't quite right. And Mark Smith looked at the photos I sent him and said it's something called miscanthus, which he said is slightly invasive, but it's sold by every, Home Depot, all those. It's a big ornamental grass. And
There's several varieties of it.
There, yes.
You cover the whole range of sins.
yes. So that's really all we're worried about right now is getting the Phragmites treatment this next Monday, hopefully.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Peter's not here, so could he provide any inputs on safety? Okay. Welcome, committee. Leah.
Janet and Asha assembled 4 buckets last week, so now I have 5 on hand. Cindy's keeping up with supplies, of course, and she requested an additional delivery, what have you, of the buckets from Ace. She actually has to submit a request for that. It's, I suppose, because of corporate tax deductions, they have to keep track of that. And, I create coupons and go to the, keep the stock up with brochures and so on. And I'll be printing some welcome letters this week. I like to give it a few weeks after somebody closes on their house, so they can get through the initial move-in and unpacking. Otherwise, things get lost in the shuffle. So I'll be sending them probably a dozen, maybe 8 or 10 welcome letters to let people know, stop in, we have a gift for you, and so on. That's it.
Okay. All right, Finance Anybody else want to volunteer? I don't see, where are the hands? Come on. Okay, well, the primary effort in this has been the beach erosion. As you recall, Jerry and Jenny and I met with Scott Hardaway, who's prime owner, I guess, and prime engineer for an outfit called Coastal Design in Virginia. It's done a lot of the engineering work that you see around Potomac, over the base, Jefferson Patterson Park, and a few other examples where they put in structures, offshore structures to try to hold the beach area. So we met with them, him and another engineer. They looked at the beach, looked at our situation there, and then responded with a proposal, basically. I think we circulated that. We didn't do it again, but it basically had 4 tasks. One was basically just an assessment and planning for what could be done there. And then the second one was a cost and a more of a detailed CAD drawing of that, whatever the proposal was. And then the other 2 tasks were had more to do with things like getting permits, managing the construction, and that kind of stuff. So we had several months ago talked to the board about executing the first 2 tasks, which were a total of $10,000. We held back on that because we wanted to get it in front of the membership and get the budget approved. Well, recall we did that at the annual meeting. So now we have approval for $10,000 for beach erosion. So I'm proposing that we go ahead and execute the first 2 tasks. I've corresponded with Hardaway. He says it'll take about a month to do those. My experience with contractors is probably double that, but whatever, we'll work those details out. But I did have some more things that I wanted them to make sure that were addressed in the study and proposed action. And so I sent Gary and Jenny a list of questions that I would like to propose to them. And basically what they are is, I want to make sure that they include the total effects that we're dealing with out there. And most of the 3 predominant ones are transport by current. That's the current up and down the bay, primarily tidal current. And then wave transport, which is probably the other predominant action, and that sometimes can be counterintuitive to what you think is going on with the current. A good example is you look up in the Potomac, and where you think that the current transport would only work if you had perpendicular barriers out there to trap the sand. Well, it turns out they put in breakwaters, which are essentially parallel to the current, but they're still working. Well, why? Well, they also look at prevailing winds, prevailing wave action on the Potomac in that area, and find that a lot of that is perpendicular to the shore. So therefore, breakwaters are sometimes breakwaters in conjunction with groins or jetties or whatever. So I want to make sure that they include both of those. One of our good friends, Kurt Larson, who's a past board member and is a coastal geologist, has been concerned, and I understand where he's coming from, that if you don't look at everything, you're going to miss stuff, and you'll build things that may work for one action but not for another, and they may defeat each other, or they may cause you to actually lose sand or beach, whatever. So I want both of those looked at, and then I also want them to look at or consider the projected 10 and 30-year sea level rise. Because if it turns out that the sea level rise is going to defeat everything else we're doing, then maybe we let nature play its course and deal with it. I don't know. But I want those 3 things looked at. I want to ensure, and they mentioned it in their proposal, but I kind of wanted to foot stomp it some more. And that's that whatever they propose, that it fully consider impacts on adjacent properties, so that we have a handle on what's going on to the club or to the upstream property. I want them to look at the impacts of removing that asphalt out there. That asphalt's a mess, and it's sometimes it gets covered up and then it gets exposed all over again. And it's broken up. It's probably an environmental hazard over the long term. It's ugly. So I want them to address the impacts of removing that. And if they recommend it, then I would like them to consider the cost in that in their proposed cost estimates to us. I want them to break out the costs. So if they're proposing, let's say, a growing in a conjunction with a breakwater in conjunction with bringing in more sand, I want that broken out. So we've got separate line items for each proposed action. And I just said, give us more concrete dates on the two tasks. And then I also would ask them as an option, this is based on discussions with Mary Ann McGowan of the club. I think they may be more interested in participating in this, and I dropped the hint of maybe some cost sharing, or at least they consider their own work to try to understand what they could do better on their own beaches. So anyway, I would propose in here that we ask for a price option for them to look at the beach, and then we can present that to her and they can deal with that. So those are what I'm proposing we send to them. I'm waiting on feedback from Jenny and Gary, and if anybody else has any ideas.
Did you have, oh, sorry.
Let me give you my feedback. I thought everything you said was spot on. However, I'm concerned that the scope creep may increase the price.
That the what?
You're asking.
Well, yeah.
But other than that, yeah,
It could,
absolutely.
and so I would ask them to tell us the impacts of the dressing tanks. And if there's a scope creep in there, we'll have to deal with it, either negotiate it or drop, something that may be lower priority.
I have a question. You referred to the property to the north. What are they doing? You're talking about it going in. We have no control over that.
They had Jamie Ward come in and propose a jetty adjacent to our property line, but I've seen no follow-up on that. I told them that, they would have to address it with us as an adjoining property owner. I've seen no action on permits yet. Kind of in their court right now.
In your request to this coastal engineering, did you ask, or will you ask, or did you ask that they look at the possible effect, or the effects of a possible jetty immediately north of our beach?
No, I guess I could.
I think that's important because that could very well happen.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put some specific language in there on that.
Because that could have a real impact.
The reason I hesitate is they provided a kind of a drawing, it was actually a drawing on top of a overhead shot of that property line, and they were actually proposing initial, kind of preliminary, proposing a jetty out there, or sill, they call it. So this would include, if they're proposing that, it would include the impact of that.
Yeah.
So I'll figure out some way to ask that specifically.
Yeah, but if that's one of the things that
it could be something we might benefit from. If they're really proposing that, and they show us that it's going to be effective,
we can let the neighbor.
we let him pay for it.
That's right. Mama raised idiots,
And he might, that might not bother him because
he's ready to do it.
he's interested in that whole beach,
So the changes or the additions that you want to this, do you have a sense that they would change the amount of what they're asking for?
Well, that's what Gary said.
It was,
Are we putting scope creep in here that's gonna cause them to come back and say, well, it's gonna cost more money?
Yeah, and the membership has already voted on all that.
Well, so we have to, if that's the case, then we have to negotiate with them and see what can be covered in that. And if we need to, we have to drop some, if there's additional scope or tasks in here that are causing increase in expense, we have to either drop it or negotiate that whole thing.
You can go over 15%.
We can go, yeah, we can go 15% over.
By less than
Oh, okay.
And I think we have enough budget, I think is generous enough, 15% is not going to kill us, right?
Actually, it's by category
15% by category.
By
and not by
category.
line item.
Yeah, by, so that.
Where is that?
It's on the back page.
Under roads and right-of-way capital.
So it's under capital.
So we actually have,
68.45. Yeah.
we have 200,000, so
Yeah, you've got plenty of room.
there's plenty of, I mean, I wouldn't propose it. to
It
go-
might impact other things later on in the year.
What's that?
It might impact other things later on in the year.
Yeah, it would. So you don't want to just abuse that, but there is room to work with it. Any other comments on the question, Jack?
Just, the jetty and the adjacent property to the north would possibly leave us like that house across the street there. where-
Well, and that's what we need to look at. But if you look at the orientation of that property, we really run like northeast to south, no, northwest to southeast. So, anyway, the way they drew that on there, it actually almost becomes a breakwater. So what their initial proposal was this sort of a jetty coming out, but it doesn't go out straight perpendicular, it kind of comes out at an angle. And the breakwater is here, so it actually, this one almost acts like a part of a breakwater. So I think that's maybe where they're coming from, as opposed to a straight perpendicular jetty with nothing else, to where you get that erosion behind it, you get that eddy effect, which I think is what's causing this problem. And that's what Kirk's been concerned about. You know, if we don't do the right thing, we could end up with an eroding eddy behind it, and then you end up losing.
I'm just gonna say, Tony and I have adjacent properties, and he's got his break jetty, and I have mine. And I do, sometimes I do lose sand and gain sand, but over time it comes back and forth. It seems, now it's a different setup than here, because we're on that part of the peninsula that kind of
Yeah,
cuts diagonally, so.
yeah.
What that does with that. He's noticed that sometimes I get more sand and sometimes he gets more sand, but mostly it seems like it scoops it out of my area and goes in his area, but it's so close it doesn't.
And the difference can be dramatic. It can be like 20 feet long and about 4 feet high.
Yeah.
And then another 3 days go by, gone.
Yeah, in fact, my jetty on my side, because I abut various properties, sometimes those well rings are hard to get over, and sometimes the sand comes up so high on my side, you could just walk by it and move.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see the different.
Well, even the community, we've seen some of that over the last few months with the storms and things. You know, giveth and it taketh away.
Mhm.
So,
Is yours a straight jetty?
Is my what?
A straight
It's a
jetty?
straight jetty, yeah. That's what they did back in '83 or whatever. And his is too.
yeah, if you look at like Google Earth,
Mhm.
and you look at from us north, there are just jetties after jetties after jetties, and what you see is, you know, they'll, like, one jetty's here, and the sand comes like this, and then behind it, the sand is over here, and goes down. Then the next jetty kind of does that, so it's like a zigzag.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
Not on that, but going back to the safety committee, I think unofficially I am on it with Peter.
Oh, okay.
So we have made plans to get together at the office and go through the inventory and tag everything again. some products that are in there that are a couple of years old that we need to get rid of, and so we're gonna be getting together to go through all of that. And we just wanna be prepared. We don't wanna be, stuck with, inferior products or whatever we're using, whether it's bandages or whatever. So we're gonna be doing that.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Are you gonna replace the items?
Yes, just roll the old ones and replace them with
Where does the money come from?
It's in the budget.
Yeah, we've got $500 or something.
500.
Well, 250 now, because we take 250 out of it for the, check every year on the budget, maintenance agreement, it's 250 a year, and they do maintenance, just routine. So that comes out of it. But, can I bring something up back to finance? I was trying to bring it up on my phone. I think the STD expires in 2021. So that's something else that the finance committee, planning committee, I'm not sure, we need to discuss.
I didn't hear what expires in,
The STD agreement.
oh,
So we'll be going for the next special tax district. And that will need to be looked at in conjunction with next year's budget. Do you want to increase the amount of the STD? It's 115 a year. Is it sufficient for our needs? I'm just throwing it out there that,
You'll need an answer by May.
Yeah,
That's when they'll come to you.
right, exactly.
And then there's a whole procedure.
There is.
It's been done
Public
several times.
notifications, and I think this last one, they didn't have a public hearing, or did they?
Oh, they did? Yeah.
There were no problems getting it through.
When does that usually start, that process?
It should start soon, I think, in conjunction with next year's.
They vote on it in June or July.
Right, because it will go into effect with next year's tax billing. So they need to have the answer by May, like Gary said. So it's just something to really kind of start thinking about in conjunction with, next year's paving, including what it costs this year versus projections for next year, and so on. Money for the beach and with our budget, but knowing that we may not have as much money, if we go forward with beach erosion options, we won't have as much money to put toward paving. So, that needs to sort of all be thought out.
well, we could just about use all the STD money for paving and cover the paving. We can't use any of that for beach anyway.
No, exactly right. So if we use
That's
more
not
of
an
that
issue.
for paving, then, covenant money would be able to go toward other things.
You want to spend down, I'm sorry. You want to spend down your STD because you're going into it as a new submission. If you go in there with a couple $100,000, they're going to say, well,
You don't need this money.
you don't need the money.
Right.
You're not spending it. So you want to spend that down anyway.
I have one other question. I think the STD was implemented before I was treasurer, so I'm not aware of the details. But didn't the county commissioners say that this would be the last one and you better figure out something?
They said that was political theater.
Yeah, and, Mike started that by saying that he's against the whole concept of STDs, remember?
Yeah.
And he wanted to get the government, as he put it, he wanted to get the government out of our lives.
He's shared with me that, 115 is a good number. And
Okay.
I tried to get them to do more than 5 years, but they wouldn't. But if you do another 5, just ask for another 5 years, I really don't imagine it'd be a problem.
And really, since you took all of the administrative costs, other than audit and some bank fees, out of the SBA, there have been no complaints. Nobody can go from this community to finance and say, Robin, I need to see the books, which is what they used to do sometimes. Well, why are they spending so much money on hand cleaner? And it wasn't hand cleaner. It was something for the computer, the virus, to clean off the virus, but that is another story. But they used to go up there and sort of pester to get information when they could have come right to me, but they did not. So once all those admin costs were taken out of the STD, as long as we spend it all on capital improvements, there are no complaints. or snow removal, things having to do with the roads, so.
Just do the rubber stamp, do it again, play it again, Sam.
Basically,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So Jack's in charge.
Okay, yeah, we'll be on the lookout for that.
All right, well, we'll be ready to work when the calls start coming in.
Yeah.
All right, old business, we have the DPPOA agreement with the drum plant project. And Mary Ann's been invited a few times to come and she hasn't. So I finally got hold of her by phone. And I talked to her about it. She is aware of it. She's not opposed to it. They've been rethinking more about their concerns about the joint activity. Now, they do have some legitimate concerns, and that, a lot of that boils down to their lack of, or maybe joint team, or lack of security and other factors. But I guess that I wasn't at the July, 4th of July thing, but she claims that there were 300 people out on the dock, that they were overflowing with porta potties, that are doing this and doing that. And I said, well, part of the answer to that is you have to have some kind of monitoring and security on if it's a dock, and you certainly don't want 300 people out there just from a safety standpoint, liability standpoint. So somebody's got to stand out there and monitor that, or don't let them out there, period. She was also concerned about, they think, and it may be true, that there are a lot of non-club, non-DPPOA people there. That you just hear word of mouth that, hey, the beach is open and the club's open and open to the public and come down and watch the fireworks. I said, well, we can't have that if we're going to, try to do this as a joint activity and live by the agreement. So in the future, we will have to think about having some kind of security at the gate to only allow club and DPPOA pet holders. You can't, I'm sure people can bring a guest or something, but those kind of things have to be addressed and planned. And she agrees. So I think what she boiled down to is that when we start thinking about the next activity, we'll need some joint planning with them to do that. Now, next activity, we talked about in October. Well, and I agree with her. They finally met as a group at the club, a committee at the club, and they decided they don't want to do it. And I think this year I would agree with that. I think there's too many risks from a health standpoint and others that I think it's better to let it go this year. We still have to address these other problems in the future. Another problem they have is their septic apparently is either failing or not adequate or whatever. I don't know, but that's a problem they have to address. That's not part of our problem, but that's a problem that they have as far as capacity down there. They've had issues with private events, and they've had issues with some of the larger gatherings. So that's something that they have to address. We want to monitor it because it could affect things that we do jointly. Okay, that's all I have on her. All right, new business. Quick claims. Do we have one to bring up? for approval?
Min, we need to affirm her approval. I didn't, everybody saw it.
On old business,
Tony?
just out of curiosity, what was the answer from the county on having a cleanup day?
Oh, thank you, because I just jotted that down to bring it up. They said they are not delivering bids.
Okay,
So
that's,
that
you know,
should have been on office report.
okay.
Okay, so no cleanup for fall.
Correct.
All right.
So no, I did not bring it with me. I can try to pull one up if you want to see one.
What?
A quick one.
Oh, well, no, I don't think we need to do that. Bamboo over on Lake, whatever it is.
It is late. It's the end of lake
I
and
think
where surf washed
It's
out.
surf, I think.
Lake and surf,
Surf.
the old surf
The
road.
old
yeah,
surf
yeah,
road.
okay. So, she asked for a quick claim of, she just said quick claim. And we went ahead and processed that. She sent it out to everybody, and I think we got okay comments from everybody. But what do we need to do now? Just-
We need to affirm the fact that we approved it, per the, email.
Okay,
track.
so it was done by email. Is there a motion to approve it?
Well, I have a
I have a
question.
question.
Oh, okay, go ahead. You probably have the same question.
No, you know, I understand the whole concept of quick claims on people that have waterfront property on a creek or whatever, and they want to put in a dock, blah, blah. What logic did she present for a quick claim for beachfront property?
She just came in and wanted to quit playing. She said she's
Well,
spoken with you, right?
Under that logic, what prevents Janet, Jack, me, and Bonnie?
You could all.
But-
For riparian rights.
But to what end?
Well, that's my whole point on this
No.
whole
Well-
quick claim process.
One thing she wants to, I think, keep people from cutting across her property, so when she put that fence in, it went pretty far down, and it makes it very difficult to, what we call our beach access, to really do that beach access, especially with the bell rings deteriorating in there. So is she wanting to extend her fence
But
even further?
she did not say anything to me about that. But
See,
this
that's the
claim was for riparian rights. We did not give up
Riparian
our
rights.
ownership of that strip of property.
But do riparian rights go to toward the beach and to the side?
It
She's got-
guarantees for water
So
access.
she's got two boundaries. One is the beach itself that you go straight out of her house. The other is the well rings and to the side there, which is also,
Our right of
but
way.
it's our right, but
it's
she
our
can't take over that right of way, correct?
No.
I mean, the right of way is getting less right of way because of.
Right, but that did not give her the right to take over Drumthorne Property Owners Association property.
And that remains
That's
our
what
right of
that
way.
is. It remains our right.
Okay, we're not seeing it.
And it's on the plats. It may not be on every map that you might see, because some of the maps are not quite accurate, but if you pull up the maps, it shows surf, or I guess surf going straight out to the water.
Does that mean conceivably that if she wanted to, she could put up some sort of fence
No,
at the end of
because
her?
we did not give her the land. We gave her the riparian rights.
But what does that do for her?
It gives her access, basically nothing more than she has right now.
It gives her access to the water,
Right, she's already has that.
Yes.
which, well, no, the
But she does.
DPPOA has access to the
Oh.
water.
Oh.
So this, granting her riparian, or granting anybody riparian rights, when there is DPPOA property between their lot and the water, all that does is provide them access to the water, including, because the riparian rights include the ability to put in a dock or maybe steps or something that allow you to access the water.
But then I ask you, since we both use that Spectre Beach to walk the dogs and such, and other people do, I know, Ashley does, and other people walk along, can she prevent us from going
No,
into that area?
no.
No.
So what does it do? Really? that's
Well,
what I
I bet
ask.
she tries.
Huh?
I bet she tries.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mike, you weren't here, there's
To
history
block access.
with
She'll
this,
block
She'll try.
with this neighbor.
Yeah.
Very
And I don't see why we would give her the riparian rights when it doesn't buy her anything and it might cause.
If she were to go to the county and ask for a permit for a pier or a dock,
Yeah,
they would send her to us for a footprint. So we began doing it just for that reason also.
but why would you would want to dock there?
I'm just giving you an idea. Now, if she went for a fence,
What
no,
I'm saying is
that's our
that
property.
there is some history is very well explained or at least attest to. And I don't, something like this makes me nervous.
I agree, but how can we say no to her when we've given other people riparian,
Right.
quick for riparian rights?
See, that's where I disagree, because I see the logic on the creeks. I see no logic on the beach.
On the
you could, no, I mean, it would be silly, but you could ask to put a pier out there.
I don't think the Corps of Engineers will approve it. or
They may, because you're not going far enough out into the bay to be in the, to interfere with navigation.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, I don't know. Only
It's
time
just,
will
it's
tell.
Jack, it'd be just like people on the river. I mean, there's all kinds of people on the river that have built docks. As long as they don't go out into the navigable waterway, the Corps will approve it.
And it makes sense on the river. I understand
Well,
on
it's-
the river. I don't understand on the.
What if she wanted to put a retaining wall there? What if she began to road or something?
Yeah.
I mean,
She could do, you know, she is, when she had a chance to repair her welded jetty, she did not.
She did.
right.
And it's gotten much worse because
Well,
of that.
but
She
I
put
was
in some
saying
rocks.
she could go to the county for permitting, for something. But
Well,
if you think it's logical or
yes.
not, she could do that, and then they would send her to us.
I'm just concerned because Gary will.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yes,
Right.
So,
Yeah. I think we're beating a dead horse until some more facts come to light.
Well, she has her equipment. She has it, so,
she has a quick claim.
yes.
Yeah, fine.
So, all we're saying is if we could bring it up for the record
Yes.
for it to be approved.
Then we need a
I don't
motion.
know.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
not
I make a
familiar with the
motion
property.
to approve the quick claim.
We own property in front of her house.
In front of all the entire strip of the
In
shoreline.
front of everybody.
I'm gonna
So
address
there's all,
I'm gonna address that in a minute.
so the waterfront would be ours, not hers, right?
Correct.
Well,
So
the
I'm
answer is
I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. Right now, let's get her quick claim off the table.
yeah, I make a motion that we accept it, that we approve the quick claim.
Is there a second?
Whoa.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second. All in favor? Say aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Well, we have two affirmative votes, so carried. Okay. There's a lot of good questions that have come up here. What do the riparian rights grant her? What do they not grant her? In other words, what can't she do? And we talked about she can't put a fence up to block it unless she actually owns that property. And apparently, back when this, Gary may know more, but back when Drum Point was initially planned out, formed, and so forth, most of the waterside lots had a strip of land, not an easement, not a right-of-way, but a strip of land owned by the association. Okay. And that, it varies in size. And the reason I know that is because when we bought our house, which was labeled waterfront, and we looked at our plat, and we had two lots there that were identified, and there was a line across the front of the lots between the lot and the water. And there was a line there, and there were survey posts. It didn't say Drum Point property. It didn't say anything. It just said, it just demarked it as being something different than the rest. Well, we didn't, I guess, we were naive and didn't, we just figured we owned that because there was a bulkhead there that the property owner had put in, there was a dock there that the property owner had put in. So we just assumed that we owned waterfront property. We didn't, we owned water view property. Okay? Well, fast forward, we decided to remodel our house and add onto it. So we combined our two lots, get that surveyed, get that replatted, and pay the fees. And then we go to the county for a variance to add on to our house. And the county says, well, you don't meet the threshold for impervious space ratio. In other words, you're going to have too much impervious space on your lot if you add on to the house. And they looked at our plats and COAs, main survey company, one of the main survey companies, frankly, that we had hired to do this, looks at it and said, well, you've got almost like, say on average, 20 by 200 foot of property there that belongs to Drum Point. If you could get them to deed that over to you or acquire it in some way, then that would increase your total space and then you would meet the threshold for impervious space. I said, oh, okay. Well, how do we do that? Well, you go to Grove Point and you ask them. So we did. This was in 2004. We said, we'd like to have that property. And so they said, okay, we'll quit claiming that property to you, no cost, signed off by the board, and we acquired that property. So I just assumed that's the process. Well, fast forward again to about 2007, and at a membership meeting, this was brought up about the board not having the authority to do that, to convey property. And motions were made and it was passed that the only thing we could do would be convey riparian rights without full membership approval. They granted the board approval to approve riparian rights, nothing else. Okay, so now we've got a mixed bag of stuff here in the community. We've got people like me and others that I know who got in before the wire and got that property deeded over to us. We've got people that have had riparian rights granted to them. I'd like to know what properties are not covered. Is there any way we can do a search or figure that out?
We do not cover,
Well, that
with
are,
any kind of equipment.
that are, well, not covered by any kind of quick claim, either riparian rights or,
I have a file of all quit claims, well, all that I'm aware of, no ones I've done, several before that.
okay, so if somebody came in and asked, you could go to that property and find out if there's been anything done on it.
Should be able to, it's only Myers County, I don't have like a file where,
Quitclaims are registered at the county.
oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Would they be on land records then?
Yeah,
So if I go to land records.
it's just like a title. I mean,
So I can search a property, can I do a search on all quit claims?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
So, that's what I guess what I'm trying to say, good point,
A lot of
they're
research.
land records, but they're not going to be in some one file of a list of quit claims that have been given. That's not, that's not,
So, but the quit claim means she owns that property now?
she,
So what's the difference between a quit claim and a riparian right in terms
the
of?
riparian rights only gives her the access to be able to get to the water.
But she wants a quit claim.
She didn't get that,
She
she got the
specified.
one with riparian rights.
Ah, okay.
I don't understand how that benefits us in any way. Why would we do that? We're giving up our property.
We're not, we're,
Oh, I know, not now, well,
Not
not
now.
now.
Back
Before we
in the
used to do
day.
it, I'm surprised. Why would we do that then?
I don't think
Why
there was
would
much
we?
thought. Why would they have given you a quit claim of the property?
Well, okay, I can think of some reasons. If we own the property, it could be taxable. If we own the property, why aren't we responsible for the maintenance of the waterfront? So why aren't we liable? So if some kid walks along and my bulkhead is all rotten, and this kid falls into the water and either hurts himself or drowns, why are we not liable for that?
But this,
And what benefit is it doing? Now, the only benefit, I guess, back in the old days, was probably considered that, well, this is all going to be a friendly community,
That's right.
and we'll all be able to wander around on everybody else's, or on the Drum Point
On the
common
beach,
property,
the
and
waterway.
have access to the water. But in reality, what happened was before probably a lot of this stuff was actually codified, people just went and built docks and bulkheads and whatever. So that, in effect, in a lot of cases, impeded that access anyway. How do you get to that property? You're not allowed to traverse my property to get to the Drum Point property.
You could come up on a boat.
So there's lots of practical reasons that I think it's silly that we own this stuff. Ma'am.
I'm confused. Didn't we just quit claim Overlook?
Riparian rights.
Riparian rights.
Oh, paradise, okay. I thought we actually quit claiming, okay.
That's
Riparian rights is a legal concept that goes back into the Old West water access days. And there's riparian rights and there's littoral rights. Riparian rights grant you the access to the water. Littoral rights grant you the access under the water. Well, most states have gone away from that, but they're different. Like Maryland only allows you to go to the water edge. Virginia actually allows riparian rights to go underneath and to actually become littoral rights. So there's differences.
Well,
But
what,
all it does is provide you access to the water. That's normally, it's only done, from an owner's standpoint. I own the land up to the water. Riparian rights give me the right to go out into the water with a dock or with to be able to suck water out of the creek or whatever. But
if you own rights to the water because of that situation in 2004, when you took care of that, but I live on the beach and I own up to some point, then there's a DPPOA thing, and then it's the state of Maryland that owns it.
right from the high water line out
Right,
into
right.
the water is the
Right.
state of Maryland.
Right. So we're talking about, on the agenda, it says quitclaim grading. Whose quitclaim? Is that Mindru and
This is
Guam?
Mendo's here, we're up on
So what is that quitclaim going to give her?
riparian rights, access to the
Well, you
water.
have riparian rights without the quitclaim.
That's where the logic falls apart between beach
That's right.
Well,
and creek.
Right.
And I don't understand, she must have something in mind that we don't understand,
I did not question.
and only time will tell.
But
Right.
so why are we doing this then when we don't really know the implications, is what I say.
Well, I can answer that. We've done it before,
Mm-hmm.
and if you
In
want
this
a bucket
situation-
full of problems, she's a lawyer, and it's no cost to her to make our lives miserable. Not that she would, not that she has that, and she cannot do, if she does have something up her sleeve, she can't do any more than anybody else we've granted riparian rights to.
right.
That's
You
it.
cannot put a fence out without water or water.
No, I'm not talking, how about a fence parallel to the water at the edge of her?
I suppose she could do that. She could do that now.
Can she
With
do that?
permit, with permit.
No, she could do that now.
They won't let her. Permit, I don't think.
I'm trying to think of why somebody wants to do that.
Why-
She must have a
Why
reason.
are we accommodating this, is what I say.
Why did you vote yes? I'm just curious.
Why did you bring it up? Why did you make
Jack.
a motion?
Why?
You made the motion to approve the plan.
Because it's already been done. Are you going to unring the bell? And I voted for it, the
You're
same
saying
reason
it's
Jack pointed it out.
You're
The
saying,
affirmation for something that already done.
okay, so why do we need to do it then?
We just needed to affirm it, which is what we did. So now Mike is just trying to address it in
Because
the
she got
water.
the quitclaim from the county?
No,
From us.
from us,
From us.
from us. County can't grant her.
Drum Point owned that piece of property between her lot and the water.
Right.
Still not.
So.
Some of
she's-
it, not all of it, some of
Well, a strip.
it, piece of it, yes.
Okay. And so riparian rights grant her the ability to be able to access, well, let me go back. That lot that Drum Point owned had riparian rights
Mhm.
to access to the water. So granting her riparian rights allows her to basically transfer our property and have access to the water.
Is that part of her property now for tax purposes?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And that does not give her authority to prevent people from going on the beach.
Right,
Exactly,
right.
exactly.
So,
So what's the purpose of this?
but what I would like,
Movie theater.
what I would like to think about, we don't have to solve this right now. It's obvious from all of us, all of our discussion, that we really don't know what riparian rights grant them the ability to do, and conversely, what it doesn't allow them to do. I would like to have a legal opinion
Yes.
on what, if we grant riparian rights, what does that give them the right to do? Could they put a fence? Okay, could they anchor a dock on our property so that they can go out into the water? Or does it have to be anchored on their property and then go out into the water? Once they're out in the water, they can put pilings in if they have state approval.
But then that would eliminate the use of the beach for the community, which is what's the benefit.
Well, so what is it that it gives us, and what does it not, and what does it give them, and what does it not give them?
Do we know why she wants this?
No.
No. Why did we
I think
approve it in
that's
the first
the
place?
Well-
important question.
Yes. Why did we approve it?
Why
You're
she
saying we're
wants
just,
this?
we're just affirming what's been approved. Why did we approve it in the first
I
place?
think it just came up in a conversation, She said, oh, I should have that too. So she came in and asked for it. I didn't say, well, what do you want to do with that, Min? I didn't question her. But Mike, I was going to say, I'll like craft an email to my, Tom Shield before I send it to him. I'm going to send it to you so you can,
And
because he's expensive and I don't want to.
Right, that's why I asked about the legal stuff
Yeah.
earlier.
Okay.
And you know, the other thing to ask is, I understand the whole concept for the creeks. You want to put in a dock, you need insurance, you need, all sorts of things. I think we want to ask them what the implications are for doing it for beachfront.
Well, Jack, what if they wanted to put in let's say they had riprap there on below the mean water line?
They already do, because the welding jetty failed.
Well-
If you didn't fix it.
Okay, but some of
That's
that
not-
is actually state
It's not
property.
going to say it's in state, I don't know.
So they would have to go, that would be a separate issue. They would have to go to the county and state and court. If
Whether
they
she
want to do
did it or
something
not.
below the mean high water line.
But no, because it was a repair, so I don't think they had to do anything. They could just put it
Well,
in.
but it's not their property.
But
It was a repair,
No,
not really, Tony, it really wasn't a repair because couldn't repair the weldings because they were too far.
well, but you.
I was able to repair my weldings because they were still intact. And actually, I paid for it, and maybe it should have been paid for by somebody else, but it was in my enlightened self-interest to do that, to preserve my beach, so I did it.
Did you need permits even though it was a repair?
No, it was a repair.
Yeah, I
An
repaired
existing
mine
structure.
and was told no permits are necessary because you're
Repairing an
repairing.
existing structure.
Well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of issues you get into, starting on the county and everything, what you can and can't do as far as repairs and replacement.
What's the address of this property?
604 Lake Drive.
I'm sorry.
I believe it's 604 Lake Drive.
I think that's right.
I think that's her. One of the few I
Well-
know. I don't know.
And the thing that what brought this all up originally, from her standpoint, was she was tired of people cutting across her property, or going along our beach access, and they would cut across it. So she extended her fence out, I guess, as far as she was able.
I'm sure.
And it made that, I understand why she didn't want people crossing her property. I also understand why they did it, because our beach access was so puny and deteriorating. So-
Right.
But it had nothing to do with anything like keeping people from going across her property. So why, the riparian rights has nothing to do with that.
No, well, just to clarify, she did not come in and ask for a quitclaim for riparian rights.
So
She asked for a quitclaim.
for,
We are allowed to give her a quitclaim for riparian rights.
but why
If she wants a full quitclaim on the property, she'd have to come to a membership meeting. It would have to be voted on by the membership. Because there's a bylaw that states the board cannot encumber property, they cannot transfer or encumber, can't give the property away without membership approval.
Oh, so what did we already approve that we're just,
Riparian
Riparian
rights.
rights.
okay, but is that a quitclaim issue?
A quitclaim for riparian
Oh, okay,
rights, not just a full quitclaim.
Lots of types of quitclaims.
Yes,
Okay.
we did not give her a quitclaim like Mike ended up getting back in
Yeah, that's a different
2004.
issue.
That was a whole different, that was before there was much of a complaint. And I will say that a number of years ago, way before my time, probably before that, you're my point, that there was some property, some people would say that the board allowed to give it away, good property. Property that, like, you want a lot here and you want this other little piece of property to supplement your property, and you're right on the water, and you were allowed to sell it to them for probably pretty good prices. I don't know, it was before my time. But that caused some complaints by certain people in the community, and that's how we ended up with, in 2007, at a membership meeting, the motion that was made to grant only for riparian rights.
Can we consider a motion to talk to Tom Shields first to understand?
Well, I don't know that it's a
what
motion.
I don't think it needs a motion.
I'm gonna craft an
Okay.
email with what I understand, and I'll send it to Mike, and Mike will,
We can circulate it, if you have any comments on it. that's
or
fine.
just go ahead and send me what you think it needs to include, and I'll craft it, and
But the other thing, the other side of this is the issue of property, granted property. Well, like I said, I'm concerned about liability and maintenance factors on the land that we own. And I guess it's another thing I would like to ask Shields is what is,
I have that down.
if we own this property, what is our liability for both injury and maintenance of this stuff?
Right. So if you were to come back and say, yes, you have liability, then I imagine what you would want to do is make a proposal to the community. And there will be pushback.
Yeah, I mean, this can be brought back
Claim
up,
everything.
this can be brought back up to membership.
Who claimed riparian rights?
Yeah, I mean,
No,
everything,
everything.
community beach,
Well,
you know,
well, that is ours, and we do have liability.
But the,
but we have liabilities, so.
the state owns the beach,
But
really.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
all
all.
making my.
I'm just saying, if he comes back and says to you, yes, on a jetty that's been not proclaimed and somebody gets hurt, the association has liability. Because you never proclaimed that property, you own it, you have liability. Then you'll have to go to membership and make a proposal that everything be proclaimed to the current property owners.
For riparian rights only, not.
No.
Oh, you're.
No, that would be a real quick one.
We're done with preparing rights, we're talking about
We're just
property.
talking-
We'll proclaim
We're talking about
property.
transferring property.
Yes,
from
which is
the
why it
individual's
has to
name
go
the
to
individual
membership.
property.
Which is why it has to come up to membership, because the bylaws say you can't do that.
Which is why I would like to know, have a better idea how much of this we still own.
Okay.
Okay?
So this is, I understand, it's a very
And then
tiny
the other,
amount. That's
the other
very
thing that I
simple.
would propose, I have more background, but let's say that somebody comes in, like me, and says, I need that property, you know, for maybe the same reason, in order to increase my lot size so I can
Yeah,
have more
which is
appropriate
reasonable.
space.
That's reasonable.
Under our current rules and under the current bylaws and the decisions that have already been made, we can't grant that. However, what I would say to them is, okay, we can give you riparian rights, and that doesn't do a whole lot for you other than let you build a pier or something. But if you're interested in that land, we will bring that up to the membership. But it's gonna take a while, you know, it's not gonna happen overnight. We're not gonna call a special meeting, we're gonna bring it up at our next membership meeting. And of course, that also requires a quorum to have a vote on it. So this could drag on for 6 months until we get to the next meeting that gives us a quorum, right, Gary? None, 10. Okay, so, but to me, that would be at least a step in the right direction where we could work with people if they need, if that's what they're really after.
And we are prohibited from selling property, right? Absolutely.
That's
Or
why
buying.
you have to go back to the community.
Or buying,
But absolutely prohibited.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, so,
without approval by the general manager.
Oh,
yeah, but, you know, again, do we want to go through the hassle of trying to value this property and go to
No.
membership to sell it and all that stuff? I don't,
No, I
to me,
don't think so.
yeah, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get a real case.
now, in this case that, in 07, somebody proposed that, at that meeting, that we could modify the language so that it said that we can quit claim property that is contiguous to your lot and the water. In other words, it's limited to only that strip of land between your lot and the water. And to avoid this problem where somebody had given away other property. Well, that still didn't pass. So we're stuck with what we have right now.
Maybe what we should do is just try to clarify this thing with the riparian rights and what that can allow this particular property owner to do in this case and not, maybe just, and then take it up next.
But I think we should be, when somebody comes in with a request like this, we should be upfront that the only thing we can do for you right now is riparian rights. If you need more than that, submit your request, and we'll have to take it to the membership.
So then that would be the answer if anybody were to come in
Yes.
that had only been given a good claim for riparian rights and now realizes that, then the answer is, well, yes, but it has to go to membership through all those processes.
But there's still, and then we would also have consulted the lawyer to find out
Yes.
what repairing rights includes and doesn't
Yes.
include in this.
Right.
Yeah.
And what our liability for maintenance and
Right.
injury is on the other hand, personal damage. Okay. Yeah, anything else on,
Well, just one thing here. If there is some concern about a fence, the fence was mentioned earlier. You're not allowed to build any fences under the covenants, so you have to get approval.
have to be approved?
Yeah. So that would be a separate question beyond all this other stuff we're talking about.
But you have to have the rights before you get the approval for the fence. So maybe, right? No?
Yeah, I
You
guess
have
that
to
would
have
make
full
sense.
foot lane to put a fence across the Drum Point property, which is what they would be trying to do if they only have a foot lane for repairing rights. Right?
Okay. Moving on.
Yes.
All right, next one is Rhea, purchase of refrigerator.
Oh, yes, the refrigerator has not been working right. It's cool, but it's not freezing at all. I had to get rid of all the meat that we had left over from last year's Oktoberfest. Trash. So we need to purchase a new one. And Mike had gone, I guess you looked at Lowe's and found some for like $500, $550. It would be an adequate refrigerator. We don't need anything that's, super big or something.
Well, I would just add, it cools, but it only cools to like 50, which is not, right?
It's not adequate.
So
It
it's
doesn't.
not even safe for refrigerator food.
Traction.
And we got, Jack and, one of our, Al Cochran came over and looked at it and tried to see if it could be fixed, and he said, no. I mean, not unless you really spend a lot of money.
Cheaper to buy.
Yeah, you spend 3 or 4 or 5, or who knows how much to fix it, and you can buy a new one for 500 or 500.
So do we have, Jack, can we afford to buy it?
Oh, yeah, I think we can find the money.
Under furniture, we got $1,300.
Yeah.
That would be one line item, sure.
That would be one possible thing, because that's the most likely.
That's what I would follow them.
So,
So do you need a motion?
well, why don't we just do
One
that?
question, can we get that $50 back from Smecco?
I think so, yeah, that's right. Jack bought a Smecco brochure, and it talks about a $50, I don't know if you get a rebate, or if you get a gift card, or whatever. But yeah, I don't know about, they'll come and pick up the old refrigerator.
Well,
As long as it's running,
It is running, it's just not
you
cooling.
can get $50 back from the state.
Right.
well, in the past, though, they had a list of refrigerators that qualify. In other
Oh,
words, the ones you buy have to qualify.
Oh.
Now, maybe they've loosened that up, we'll have to check it out.
oh,
Because it didn't,
I
it
had
doesn't
it
apply,
done.
it doesn't apply to every model.
well, we had one done years ago. We did not buy a brand new refrigerator. We didn't buy a refrigerator. We just had a second old one downstairs, which we didn't need, and they came and took it. So
Well,
maybe things have
all I'm
changed.
saying is you just have to check and
I'll
make sure, because it may not apply to everything.
Right.
I would imagine that applies probably to standard refrigerators, not like, Sub-Zeros and.
Right. But the ones that they're trying to get you to buy are the energy efficient ones. So they have a list of qualifying.
Well, the other thing is,
They, we got rid of 2 refrigerators that were in that house. And, obviously 20 years old, those refrigerators. One was even a freezer. And we had to move it outside the house.
Right.
But then Lincoln also, they were running, and they came and they took both of them.
Okay.
so, but that begs the question, this
Ours
runs, but it doesn't work
Well,
efficiently.
It
So-
runs, it
Well, just call.
No, well,
Follow.
this
well, they're not gonna use it for somebody else.
No,
They're not like, they'll,
So-
oh,
No,
okay.
yeah, no, I definitely.
I think it's just an incentive to get rid of old,
Yeah,
inefficient.
yeah,
Right, okay.
upgrade.
I'll check into it and see.
Yeah,
if
check,
y'all-
I mean, it's a good deal if we can get it.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah.
To buy?
I think so.
Well, it's within the budget, we need a motion to approve stuff.
It's office equipment, isn't it?
Okay, you're right,
Robert, had asked if we could consider buying a trailer to haul our mower and equipment and stuff around, rather than, I mean, it won't fit in a pickup truck, the mower won't. And it's a lot of wear and tear on the mower, we have to drive it all over the community. And I think, my opinion is it would be a good thing to do, but it's not essential. Getting by, but I'm just looking at this again with a question about budget. I looked at, see, Gary provided an example, you can get them a utility trailer at Lowe's. I found, just happened to find one on Craigslist, you know, 1-year-old one. But it's gonna run probably minimum of $1,000 up to maybe $1,500, $1,600 plus registration and licensing. So we'll probably be looking at at least $1,500 out of pocket, $1,500 to $2,000, I'd say. I'm looking in here are equipment purchases, maintenance. Might fall into that, but there's only $1,200 in the budget. We've already spent $760, so I guess the overall group, there might be room. Any discussion, Gary, your thoughts on it, since you're the road guy?
Well, it's the end of the season, so you could kick this into the spring if you wanted to. But, I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, it's going to make it easier for the Robert or whoever's doing that job, as long as they have a vehicle to tow the trailer, to be able to get the trailer. They'll be more efficient. They'll be able to do a better job. One of the problems is if you drive the mower out to, say, Deer Drive and mow, but you also needed an edger or the hedge trimmer. Well, now you gotta go all the way back to the office and put it in your truck and then come out. So you can carry everything you need with you in one blow. So you save in mileage. You don't save in mileage, but you save in hours. And it's not a lot of money. And the payback on it is probably a year and a half, return on investment. The tags for a trailer are not that much money, and insurance goes to the vehicle that's towing it, I think. But you need to check that. But it's the end of the year, and maybe you do some shopping and get a deal over the winter.
Right. Another thing that's helped with is when we have to transport the equipment to a maintenance facility. Now we have to pay somebody to come get it. We can be able, you'd be able to load it up on a trailer and take it somewhere to get it repaired.
Of course, it's got to be a trailer that will also facilitate loading.
Yeah.
So you can just drop a gate and drive the thing in. And it takes a certain size and weight carrying capability. You can't just buy any old trailer.
Jack?
Where would we store it?
At the office, I think either
Is there
behind or to the side of the office.
Okay. Just trying, it doesn't seem like there's room around the garage.
It would have to go behind.
You'd have to go behind or on the side.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it. Gary said we should be able to back it in there either area.
Right by Rhea's office, you can park it right in there between the tree and the building. I'm not sure you'd be able to maneuver it back in the alley.
Everything that we add to our inventory is automatically covered on our insurance. So if somebody were to, back up to that thing and take off.
I can contact the insurance agent to make sure, but anything of any significance, we would probably select a road that we don't have this.
Of course, you'd want to secure it too.
Yeah, chain it, yeah.
Okay. Guess what I would consider maybe is we table this for at least a month. Jack, look at the budget and see where we can put it in, and then if
And we're talking $1,500, $1,500, 2,000.
1,500 to 2,000, I'd say.
2,000.
And Gary's got a good point, I mean, we're in the season, we don't have to rush into it.
But you might get a better deal at the end of the season like this.
Right.
Yeah, December's a good time, January, December. It's like a white sale, right?
Right.
And I'll check on insurance to be sure.
See if our insurance, what we need to do for insurance for coverage and make sure we're okay there. Okay, one additional item was, we didn't get on the agenda, but the other day I was riding the road down by the beach and noticed that our trash cans were gone. And then I reported that, and big panic, and said, well, we have to lock the gate. Well, turns out the cans had been planned to be picked up and put behind the office for the winter. The only problem is, what do we do about the trash down there now?
You mean the people, well, what do you mean, at the beach itself?
Yeah.
Well, we hope that people are mature enough to take it back home.
They're not. So,
So I guess we could keep the receptacles there through the year.
well,
Why not?
well, I wondered,
Why not keep them there all year round?
well, part of the problem, I guess, is you're probably not going to fill them. There's two of them. So how do we arrange to pick up with Evergreen?
Like, I could ask,
Oh, I've
Pam Fagan, has been doing some things while Joe's under the weather. And she's been taking care of receptacles there that we had put in at the causeway and at River Terrace. So she could go there on a Sunday and pull it out on the outside of the gate. The gate remains open 24/7 this time of year anyway. But we would want to pull it out because I don't think that they would remember and think, oh, is there one inside,
No, it would have to be pulled out.
Yeah.
We would have to.
Right.
And I don't think we probably don't need to have two of them
No, this one.
for the winter, but
Why don't you put it outside the gate?
just leave it outside.
Would neighbors not object to that? I don't know.
it's our property.
Sure. But I can, have her take one back down.
I think we should have one down there. I mean, I've been impressed. It's been very effective down the causeway. The amount of trash down there has decreased, I think, markedly. I don't know you guys have lived down around there, but it seemed to me, and the can's getting filled up, so people are using it. And I'd like to keep encouraging people to do that.
Okay. So where should we put it outside the gate?
Well, let's try that and see if
Okay.
see people use it. If they're too lazy to go from their car to there, then maybe we move inside.
And then have her
Move
take it
there.
back forward. Okay.
And talking about trash cans, it was my understanding maybe a couple of meetings ago that we were going to put a trash can at the Riverview Causeway. We decided not to, is that?
No, it was
River
River Terrace.
Okay.
Off of Overlook.
Off of where?
Off of Overlook, right by the club gate, that's River Terrace. That road that goes straight to the water.
Between the Causeway coming down off of.
No, forget the causeway. Overlook goes out to the Drum Point Beach, or Drum Point Club
Yeah.
gate. Okay. Just before you get to the Drum Point gate, there's a road
Yeah.
heads down to
Yeah.
the right, down to the water. That's River Terrace.
Okay.
We have there's a small beach there. There's a little bit of parking. There's a path that goes out to that. That's where we live.
So can we talk about putting one at the Riverview Causeway, because there's trash laying on that road now? I mean,
Well,
is that?
but then we,
where's
yeah,
that?
we could, but we also have a sign there that says no parking. So if we put a trash can there, it doesn't really make sense to have a no parking sign.
Well, that's not.
Maybe we don't, I don't know.
Take the sign down. Yeah, that's my point. I did go by there a few days ago, and there were two sheriffs down there, because apparently there was an issue with people parking on the road. So, one of our residents was in discussion with the two deputies. So, I mean, if we're gonna allow them to park there, then take the sign down. That's my point.
Well, right.
with the signs is that it will discourage some people, so that's not overrun with people parking.
Why are we trying to discourage parking? Are we afraid it's going to upset the
Because-
soil, it's going to
No,
slow
the people that live in and around that little area, you know where it becomes an issue. You know the parking pad that was put in for the dry hydrant at that causeway? Years ago, there's a parking area.
Yeah.
Okay. When it first became apparent that the board was going to do that, it was on an agenda. And that was one of those board meetings that like, people just kept pouring into the office for the meeting. And they were all people that lived down around there. They did not want a parking area. Because it was already an issue with people coming to park and fish and spend the night and crash the causeway. So that's why there were posts then added to the whole, somebody did a whole drawing. I think he's not an architect, but a landscape architect. So he provided us with a whole drawing of what would be acceptable to them. That's how we ended up with the posts along that parking path. I guess they're removable if a fire engine does need to come. It's never been really used. But anyway, so then that's also how we ended up with posts at the parking pad at that Laurel Lane causeway. That was always allowed to be open. People could park there. There was a sign, realize, I don't remember what the sign said, but, this is meant for fire pumper trucks, and understand that if you're going to park here, your car might be damaged while they access it. Because they'll put, something right through your windows to access the hydrant, in an emergency. But because of the request down the causeway for that to be blocked off, we ended up having to block off the one on Laurel Way. You do it for one, you gotta do it, for the other. And when it becomes an issue. It does.
It's a dangerous area because people come around that curve. A lot of people who live there know that they have to slow down, but there are other people who don't. And when you come around that curve and you have cars sitting out 2 wheels on the road, I came around there the other day. There was a car parked here and then a car parked behind the sign. Then a little bit further, a few feet further, there was a couple that had 2 children in the middle of the road. And then another foot later, there were dogs unleashed in the road. So somebody's going to get hurt. And that's my point. I don't know what our liability is, but if we don't try to curb this, to my point and try to do our best to enforce. I stopped the other day, there was a car that was pulled up, and I said, okay, I'm going to say something to this guy. And I said, you see that sign that says no parking? And he said, yeah, I know, but I'm behind the sign. I said, it means no parking anywhere. Well, yeah, I know, the sheriff just chased off some people, but I'm just back here. So he was bound and determined to park there. So I just went on, but my point is, either if you're not going to, I don't think a no parking sign deters anyone.
I agree.
It
Yeah,
doesn't.
but taking
So-
it down doesn't solve the problem either.
Gary?
This has been talked about over the years many, many, many times. The association has gone in there and put posts in, big stones,
Yeah,
plantings, they've ripped them all out.
yeah.
In terms, so, those people that go, and that's encouraged by that guy who lives there.
He's
Yes.
passed
He
away.
allows them to park there and use his dock to go fishing. So, yeah, people are gonna come use it. The problem is, we have no police authority. We have no authority to enforce anything.
Okay, yeah.
So what you could have done was sat right there and called the sheriff's department and had, just like the other sheriffs somehow got called. The sheriff will respond if a property owner is on site to meet with them. And they will enforce the parking. Otherwise, not gonna happen. They won't enforce it unless somebody's
Well,
there.
I called the other day because Maggie, was it you? Somebody reported that somebody was parked there and it looked to them like as though there were 2 young women living in it.
Yes. yes.
Okay, and so it all runs together. So I called, I suppose they came and took a plate number. But then like a week later, it was back. And the person that called me, he said he thought somebody, young woman was plying her trade. Did you get my drift? Right there in the car. So I called the sheriff's office and I was trying to explain the issue. And he said, well, I can't just send somebody out there to watch that car. And I said, well, I'm not asking you to do that. Of course you cannot do that. But I'm just asking you to come now because apparently there's somebody in it plying her trade. And they did actually come, and sure enough, he called me back, and it was just two young people, and they were smoking some weed, and he chased them away. So, it's hard. It's hard to know what to do.
Well, my point is, if we can't do anything to enforce it, then take your sign down. Just let
But that just
that. So,
I think the sign, you know what,
Get the sign down.
Keep the sign on.
I mean,
How does taking the sign down help?
it doesn't help.
It's gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
I don't think it would make it worse. So, okay, so if we, I mean, and I go by there at least 4 to 5 times a week, pretty much every day do I walk down there. And if there are cars that, and I have my phone with me, if there are cars in the roadway, I'm gonna call the sheriff. So I think if we have community members that go, I mean, Kathy and Bill are right up there at the top. They can see cars, they know what's going on. So, that's just my.
Well, I
Frustrating.
don't think taking it down will solve anything. It's there, just discourage us a little bit. It also said if something happens to their car, they can't come after us, because we got a sign there that says no parking.
Right.
So,
That might protect us from liability.
right, so, and as far as liability, if they're on the road, we're not liable. If there's an accident or anything that's between the occupants of the vehicles and or pedestrians, not us.
And I just, I see your point and I agree. I just hope somebody doesn't get hurt.
No, I know.
So as far as the trash can there, I guess it makes sense not to, because we're saying no parking. So if we put a trash can there,
Yeah,
But there are people that walk by.
true, but it might, I don't know, it's a little bit,
So,
contradictory too.
Yeah, I think most
But
of
I
our,
see,
most of our litter is out the window, it's not people on just
Right.
I think, unless they're fishing or something. If you don't take the sign down, let them park there, then are we done with that? Okay. That's all, that's everything I have. Any other comments, public or board? I apologize for such a long meeting.
oh, just the, I was noticing, like, we have the general meeting, and, we hand out the, all this information. And I was just wondering, we had one page that was just the budget. Is it possible to include also what the budget was for the prior year?
I actually,
So that people can see, like they can take the simple,
I gave that one.
oh,
I gave the profit and loss for the year ending, just
Yeah, but-
ending.
yeah, but you had,
And current.
there was another page that, I obviously didn't bring it with me.
You know, the one for the
But
newsletter.
Yeah, it was just a single page, and it had, everything down, and it said, the budget for, 2021, and how it all,
Yeah.
This page.
I'm just wondering
Is
if,
that one there?
yeah, I'm
So
just
I-
wondering if something like that could be for the, like last year's budget, to
Yeah.
be included, so that when people, when they're sitting there and, looking, okay, they're looking at the, profit loss and then whatever,
So that
that one
they,
just seems to be
I could make
simple
copies of,
to, they can just say, oh, well, this is what we had last year, this is what we're proposing this
I
year.
could make copies of this year's and, the upcoming.
Yeah, just that single page,
Yeah,
not,
I could do that.
yeah, that
We
would
need
be,
so for next year, when we have the budget vote at the June meeting, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'll include the one we just did and the one for the.
just so that, this is what we budgeted last year, and now this is what we're doing for this year. And, you know, you can see
Right.
where certain lines we've added, or
Right.
some that we've, you know,
Right.
reduced.
And I was going to say, I could actually, maybe, if there's room, insert a column, but probably not, because it would get to be too wide for the newsletter, and maybe too conflicting with, like this year, Mike Chacon suggested, you know, why is Rhea's salary broken out into her tax deductions and her net? So that's combined now this year. So it would get too complicated to put an extra column,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
But to do the extra page, yeah, that would be fine. Good idea.
Anything else? All right, our next meeting, normally it would be on the 3rd, but that's election day, so I don't want to do a meeting on that day, which may be the 10th. So I somehow didn't get on my calendar, but I'm going to be out of town somewhere there, and I don't remember the exact date. We do the 10th tentatively, and I'll either impose on Jack or on Tony to run it, I mean, and, or I'll be here.
And where would we still try to make?
Jack, are you?
Yeah, I guess we can still do it here, no problem.
Same time? Or we going back to evenings at any point?
Any preferences?
The day is,
Hey, I'm gonna make it on the day.
Pardon me?
I'd rather make time of the day.
I like it during the day, but it's supposed to be, maybe once we eventually go back to the office, we could revert to that.
Well, yeah, in that, we could almost do it in the office, but it's still a little crowded.
It's up to you
I
guys.
mean, we'd have to be masked if we're going to do it.
Yeah.
All right, you want to stay with 11
One more time?
one more time, see, Jack, that,
That works.
okay.
That's what you said.
Okay. That done,